Working in the UK is a dream of millions of applicants. Skilled worker visa offers you that opportunity. Now, in this video, I'm going to explain you what the skilled worker visa is and also what mistakes to avoid to maximize your chances of approval. So first, you need to understand what is a skilled worker visa. So this visa allows you to come and live and work in the UK for an approved employer who has sponsored you. Now, this visa has replaced the Tier 2 General Work Visa, and after working for consecutive 5 years, you may be eligible to apply for indefinite leave to remain in the UK. Now let's look at eligibility criteria for a skilled worker visa. So in simple sense, it starts from an employer. The employer has to be approved by the Home Office. Now approved means that they must hold a license to sponsor you from outside of the UK. So once they have the sponsor license, then they're allowed, depending on the type of license and the compliance background, they would be allowed to sponsor a worker from outside of the UK. Once you have that clarity that the employer is approved, then you move to the second step. That means you should have a certificate of sponsorship that is provided to you, which clearly confirms what is your title, what is the salary, place of work, the contract period, whether the certificate of sponsorship is defined or undefined, and the relevant details are mentioned in that. Without this certificate of sponsorship, you cannot apply for skilled worker visa. Now, the third part is that whatever job that you've been selected to do, it must be from the list of eligible occupations. Now, what are the list of eligible occupations? I'm going to provide that in the description also. So please check that. The fourth thing is that for skilled worker visa, there is a minimum salary threshold. That is quite important, and I'm going to explain that in the detail because it is far more complex than just having one amount for the entire professions that are listed in the eligible list of occupations. Now, how much amount you have to pay for the skilled worker fee in terms of visa fees depends on where you make the application from and also the tenure and in what category. But I will give you the brief range of what the fees are. For example, if you're applying from outside of the UK for sponsorship issued up to the maximum period of 3 years, the current fees is £819. If you've been given, for example, for 5 years, then the fees is £1,618 if you're applying from outside of the UK. If you applied from inside of the UK for under 3 years, it's £943. And maximum, you can see if it's more than 3 years up to 5 years, for example, it's £1,865. Now, another thing to remember is besides this visa fees, you also have to pay something called immigration health surcharge. In case you get ill, you have to be taken to the hospital to be looked after by the NHS. So this fees is determined by the tenure of your sponsorship. So if you've been sponsored for 5 years, then the fees per year is £1,035 times it by 5, and then you get an amount. This is in addition to the visa fees. Now, the next requirement is to prove your knowledge of English language. Now, there are two parts to it. I will simply explain. Now, the requirement is that in terms of reading, writing, hearing, and listening, you need to achieve a level B2. There are various ways by which you can prove your knowledge of English language. One could be you have done a UK degree. If you've done a UK degree, it meets the standards, then you should be okay. But if you got an overseas degree where you don't know whether it meets the UK equivalent standards or not, there is an organization called ECCTIS. I'm going to put them in the link down below. They charge around £252 to assess whether your degree that has been taught overseas meets the knowledge of English language requirement. If it's approved, then you get a reference number, you can put it in the application. Alternatively, what you can do is sit for a secured learning test with an authorized center by the Home Office in your home country and pass the test and achieve at least level B2. Now let's understand the salary requirements for a skilled worker visa. The best way to understand is that there'll be two rates that will be applicable. First is that is the minimum threshold that is given by the UK Home Office that its salary must be at least £41,700 or the going rate, whichever is the highest, you would need to apply that rate. Let me take an example. Imagine you're a barrister and your ongoing rate as a barrister is £55,000 per year. But the minimum profession rate for that, for skilled worker visa is £41,700. And if your employer selects £41,700, they will be making a catastrophical mistake because the right amount and the right salary should have been £55,000, not £41,700, because it has to be the highest of the minimum amount and the ongoing rate. And if the ongoing rate is higher, then that is the amount the employer has to put on the certificate of sponsorship also and pay you. Now, many of you must be wondering, 41,700 pounds is a lot of money. I'm very young. I don't think so I will achieve this salary. Is there a ray of hope? The good news is, yes, there is a ray of hope. As long as you're under the age of 26, a recent graduate, or who's undergoing a professional training, or somebody who's a PhD, I think you got some excellent opportunities and you may be able to qualify for skilled worker visa. First of all, the minimum salary is 33,400 pounds. So as a young entrant, as a new entrant, you may be able to qualify. But then there are two streams. When you are a PhD, for example, and you are under the STEM stream, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So if you've done PhD in these fields, then your salary threshold, minimum salary threshold, would be 33,400 pounds. But if you are a PhD which is not in STEM stream, then the minimum salary that you need to meet or have an offer for should be 37,500 pounds. But the PhD must be relevant to the job that you're doing. It cannot be completely poles apart. So that is a ray of hope. And given the fact that this is for young entrants, you may be eligible for lower visa fees. You can check it in the description. What if the certificate of sponsorship was issued before 4th of April 2024? Then, if you are someone who already has a skilled worker visa and now wants to, extend the visa, the income threshold would not be 41,700 pounds sterling, but it would be 31,300 per year or the higher of the ongoing rate. So, for example, like I gave you in the previous one, if you have a profession like a barrister and the ongoing rate is say 55,000 pounds, and the certificate of sponsorship was issued before 4th of April 2024, the minimum income threshold would be 31,300 pounds. So whichever is the highest one, you will choose that. Now to the most important part of this video. As I said in the beginning, this can literally make sure that you can avoid refusals both as an employer and as a candidate. Selecting the occupation code is one of the most important steps that you can take. Now, the classic mistake that employers do is selecting the wrong code or camouflaging a job into a lot of generic responsibilities and selecting a code that doesn't really reflect the true nature of the role. Now, before I go about how to avoid the mistake, let me tell you how the portal looks like, and it's called Cascot Web. So let's look at on the screen. And as you can see that this is how it looks like. And on the top of the screen, you will see a search box. On the search box, you can write the title, whichever you're recruiting for. For example, if you're recruiting for an IT project manager who comes up with a background of handling a lot of IT transformations and projects, you can select that, and then you will see the code is clearly written 2131 at the bottom. That is the code you need to enter in the skilled worker visa. Now, where people make mistake is for example, they want a software developer and they'll be doing on day-to-day basis, based on the job description, building applications, updating the code, deleting the code, testing the application, debugging the application, and managing the users. So the role on paper is of a software developer, but in reality, you know that is not what is reflected in the occupational code, which is of a IT project manager. So my guidance and recommendation always is, go to the tool and select the nearest title, the nearest profession or the occupation that you believe matches the day-to-day activities. Finally, we come to the final stage of our video, which is what documents are required for your application. The first thing is you need a certificate of sponsorship reference number. This is an alphanumeric number. If you do not have a copy of your certificate, you should request one from your employer. Then you need to have a proof of meeting the English language requirement. Right now, the requirements are level B2. Remember, I told you if you are trying to extend your visa or update the visa and you got the test before, you already got the visa before, you don't have to prove it again unless you're changing the category. Now you need to provide the passport copy that proves who you are. You need to provide the details of your job title, the annual salary, and the occupational code. These would be automatically mentioned on your certificate of sponsorship, the employer's name, and the spouse's license number. Now, I hope this video has been of use to you, and if you find it helpful, please do subscribe to the channel, because it is through these videos I'm trying to make a difference to many people who are caught up in the limbo of changing legislation that has become very complex. And if you feel that you need my professional assistance to help you fill up the form and look at your documentation, or if you're someone as an employer who wants to apply for sponsorship license, you can always reach out to me on paid consultation basis.